The dust is beginning to settle and people are starting to try and work out exactly how and why and when Dublin finally had their unbeaten run broken. Did it happen all the way back in the depths of the COVID training? Was it something more recent than that? Does it revolve around Cluxton? Pete McGrath had a great line about the Great Down team and how their greatness stole away like a thief in the night. Is that what happened? When was the night? When did their greatness steal away? We're going to answer that in the Power Rankings in just a moment. But before we do, Eoin, you're off on an adventure.
Off on an adventure, yeah. We're covering the All Ireland finalists in the hurling this week. So heading down to Limerick and Cork over the next couple of days, and it should be interesting to see who have the biggest super fans, which city is bedecked in its respective colours in more emphatic fashion over the next little while. And just trying to see what it's like to actually exist in a county where there is a hurling final build-up, because it's not something that I've experienced ever in my life.
The smell I want off those Cork fans is going to be fairly pungent this week, right? Because it's been such a long time since they've been properly relevant, and even then, somehow over the course of 2 games, they managed to lose.
It should be an amazing occasion as a result of the Cork fans being there, and as a result of them being in waiting for so long without a final, which seems to have just crept up to 8 years, kind of unbeknownst to anybody. Kind of felt that after 2013, it was like, oh, don't worry, this Cork team will be back, and it just never happened. There was a couple of near misses here and there, but they limped out of so many different championships. And the flip has sort of happened this year, where it's like, have they kind of limped into the All-Ireland or sneaked into the All-Ireland? And it kind of feels that a little bit, because we have one very dominant team in the land who are strong favourites for this Sunday. That is the sort of ideal scenario that Cork want to be in going into this weekend. Not too dissimilar to how Mayo would have wanted to go in against Dublin, for example, anytime they would have played them.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how much pressure that brings to bear on the players. It doesn't feel so far like Limerick have been in any way affected by pressure in these big games. I mean, you even think back to the All-Ireland semi-final that they lost, and the comeback that they'd made, and at the end of the game they really should have had an opportunity to tie that up and bring it to extra time. Would it have been extra time on the day at that stage, or would it have been straight replay? I don't know, but
replay probably. But yeah, I think a lot of people were kind of expecting that to be the rematch this year, weren't they, when they looked at the semi-final lineup, and expecting Limerick to bury that that afternoon a little bit, because it is something that I'd say annoys them at this juncture. Maybe not in 3 or 4 years' time if they manage to turn this into a 4 in a row, for example. But at the moment, it's like this could have been their 4 in a row.
And here's the question, right? What's better for hurling as an outcome?
Cork winning, I think.
Is it?
I don't know.
Limerick crowning their greatness as one of the best things that's ever happened.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They have taken the game to new heights, and I guess in hindsight, it may not have seemed it at the time, but in hindsight, Kilkenny, was that good for hurling? I think it probably was. I think that what happens afterwards then is a reaction from all the other counties, from 7 counties who are chasing Kilkenny and who are all taking their levels to such a height that the game had never seen before. And what then happens is you have the 2010s, which unquestionably was not unquestionably, I think people would say the 90s was the best decade of hurling ever, but skill-wise and intensity-wise, the 2010s was the best decade of hurling we've ever seen. And I think that process was accelerated because Kilkenny had brought the game to such new heights. It'll be interesting to see what happens in football now over the next little while, now that there is a little bit of belief on top of the whole acceleration of standards that Dublin would have brought into play. Will we now see a decade of really good football that we were used to seeing for the last 10, 12 years in hurling? That could be the reaction. So yeah, on immediate thoughts, it's the best result is the underdog always. That's who I'd always pine for, and also because Cork have waited so long for this, and the scenes will be incredible. But then having this great team continuing to win will probably bring everybody's level up just a little bit over the next little while. So I can see both sides to it.
The other thing is that the pipeline of talent that the Cork hurlers have produced over the last couple of years is so brilliant that you would expect them to be able to maintain this for the next couple of years. I don't know. That's the other thing. Maybe you need the victory to nourish it. And obviously Patrick Horgan is not getting any younger. He's at that stage of his career where in the Examiner today they're talking about the other nearly men who didn't actually win an All-Ireland, and he's essentially top of the list at this stage himself, and Ollie Canning, four All-Stars for Ollie. and maybe he needs one to keep going. You know, if he gets one now, he'll keep going for another couple of years, maybe.
Waterford players, obviously, you'd have to throw in there as well.
They're absolutely on that list as well. 7:35 this morning. If you want to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Let's exactly show you what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock. We're going to do our power rankings, much eagerly anticipated. A lot of abuse already coming on Twitter. We'll see how much abuse there is after that. Sports pages 8:05. Phil Healy, fresh from the Olympic Games, at 8:15. Mick Bowen, the Dublin ladies football manager, women's football manager, 8:30. Graham Hunter at 10:09. And an absolutely, truly remarkable press conference yesterday where Barcelona laid bare the amount of money that they are in debt. It's over $1 billion, and how they got there. 8 million given to a scout to recommend talent in South America at one stage in recent seasons. The football pod with Paddy and Andy, recorded last night. Totes emotion on both sides, apparently. We'll talk with Tommy about that at 9:10. And then Kevin Kilban is back with some relatively controversial views. And it seems like we'll get into those at 9:30. If you want to get in touch with us, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. It is time for the Power Rankings.
Some of these critics, these pundits,
I absolutely adore them lads. I have unbelievable time for them, but they're a great bunch, but it's not acceptable.
They like to play the hard man when they're on it. It's not very pleasant when you're trying to manage a team. All you're looking for is a bit of civility and a bit of decency, but they just dismiss you like you know, you have nothing to do with the bloody occasion.
We don't usually do these this late in the year because things are fairly linear from this point onwards, where Dublin win their semi-final and they win their final and everybody else is just in a stack and they stay put. But 2021 is not a linear year. 2021 is a year where great change has happened. I just want to remind people of what we're looking at when it comes to the top half of the power rankings, because there was a little bit of confusion last week, I think. I'll run through these very quickly. At 16 is Offaly, at 15 is Westmeath, 14 is County Cork, 13 is Clare, 12 is Derry, Roscommon are in at number 11, Kildare are in at 10, Meath are in at 9. So that is the second last page, if you like, and then we'll get into the top 8 here. No movement on any of these, by the way. I just wanted to clear them all up after last week. Armagh are in at number 8, Galway at number 7, Monaghan at number 6, and then Donegal at number 5. Tyrone currently at number 4. At number 3 this week, down one place, is Dublin. Number 2, down one place, is Kerry.
Whoa!
And at number 1, up 2 places, is Mayo.
A troll.
How is it a troll?
What do you mean?
They've beaten the 6 in a row.
They have.
All-Ireland champions.
They
if
have,
they don't go to number 1 after
number
that,
one,
then what
Kerry
do
are
you
still
want?
favourites. Is this, like, really, are you just trying to ratchet up the pressure? Honestly, now, all joking aside, before we get into the actual, the merits of this,
No?
you really think after this that
After Saturday.
you're making Mayo the favourites now?
I do think that there was room for this to move after the other semi-final. By the way, I'm not saying that this is stuck until
I don't believe you. I don't believe you. I think if Kerry, no matter what happens, you won't change this now, because Kerry win by 10 or 15 points, you'll go, COVID.
Yeah.
Kerry win a close game, you go, told you. That's what you're doing. You've completely cemented the fact that you're going to be ratcheting up and hyping the shite out of Mayo between now and the All-Ireland final.
You could say that, and I can appreciate why you would call me an awful, cynical person like that, because maybe it's because it's true. But this is not about anybody else in this list. This is about clearing the decks for Mayo to arrive at number 1. If we managed to clear the decks last year for Cavan and Tipperary to arrive in whatever it was, the top 5 or 6 places as a result of their provincial wins, then we got to clear the decks at number 1 for Mayo to go in there after beating that Dublin team on Saturday. And look, I mean, who cares if this is if you think that it's about ratcheting up pressure on Mayo or it's about playing down Kerry's chances or whatever. You can think that. It doesn't matter. This morning is all about Mayo.
Okay.
And the last couple of days have been all about Mayo.
Okay. Just to open the kimono, lift the curtain, explain how the sausage gets made. My phone went off at 1:55 a.m. late on Saturday night. It was a call. Oh, you're looking a bit guilty there. What's going on there, Owen? Who was it?
That was me.
5 to 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
Owen obviously had got the latest missive from. I didn't answer stupidly.
You should have.
I would have regretted now for the rest of my life. I did not answer, because whatever it was, it would have been. But I'm given to understand that an impromptu High Council meeting of the Grand Wizards of the Kerry Mafia was in situation, and
I like it
in session, and you guys had decided at that point, Mayo were going to win. That was it.
It was either that or somebody who was angry about your Springbok take. To be honest, if I could properly remember, it would be great. But unfortunately, I don't have that information to hand. Of course, there will be a Grand Council meeting. But I mean,
and you're definitely making Mayo favourites. That's it. Irrespective of the fact that the bookmakers still make.
There is kind of like trying to take away. I'm trying to make a case here that will stop you from bringing it all the way back to this Grand Council or whatever nonsense you're spouting there. I'm trying to make a compelling case here for why Mayo deserves a surge up to the top of the power rankings. And I don't think you need to look too far to find it. I think that there is something about a new arrival of this Mayo team on Saturday night. Even though we've become quite familiar with them quite a lot over the last little while, there was just something about some of the personnel that stuck out to me. And one of those people, for example, being Padraig O'Hora. Who are you backing right now in an All-Ireland final if he's marking, say, David Clifford? Are you giving him every chance of being the guy who manages to put the brakes on a great footballer? Because maybe I'm getting carried away here a little bit, but I'm like, there is that level of performance in a player like him, and it's not just him, but he is obviously one of the newer names, one of the people that we are becoming more familiar with over the course of the last year or so. And maybe it is a complete overreaction to them beating Dublin, and maybe not. But
actually, look, and to get into the seriousness of the whole thing, Clifford's form is not at the level where we had anticipated it would be just yet. Now, he hasn't played the All-Ireland semi-final in Croker. Sorry, maybe his form is wrong, but the returns are not at the level that we thought it might be. And there's every opportunity for him to kick 2-5, 2-6 against Tyrone and get that level of confidence back. Tyrone, by the way, Kerry are 7-1 on to win that game.
What?
Yeah, that's what it is at the moment.
I'm not going to sit here and make a case that Tyrone are going to be Kerry after everything they've been through, but it's Tyrone. 7-1 on in the game against Tyrone is just, if that doesn't give you the heebie-jeebies as a Kerry person, then I don't know what does. But 100%, I'm not going to sit here and make a case that Kerry are going to lose that game because that would be disingenuous. So I think they will win that game.
To cut you some slack, I think that just some doubts about where Clifford is at the moment allows for some wiggle room. And actually what we've seen from Mayo from the 40th minute on maybe in the All-Ireland semi-final and the second half of the All-Ireland quarter-final suggests that they are definitely going to be able to put in a level of performance for a period of time in the All-Ireland final. My concern would be that the first half performance of both games was lacking in direction and identity, and kind of at stages looked a little bit like crisis, and that if they do the same in the All-Ireland final, that they're going to come up against a side who are absolutely ready to score goals and create enough chances to be too far ahead that the game is essentially over at half-time. There is a scenario where it's an 8 to 10 point game at half-time in the All-Ireland final, and it's too much for Mayo to claw back.
Yeah, it could definitely happen. You do get memories of what happened in their last championship meeting, which was in 19, obviously, and Kerry race away by, I don't know what the early lead was, but it ends up being 10 points, and it was just, you just couldn't claw it back. For whatever reason, I think that you can put a lot of that down to them having home advantage on that afternoon and the game not taking place in Croke Park, which seems to be a venue which is now giving Mayo a couple of points, and it seems to be a venue that they actually enjoy playing in at the moment, and they've got a pretty good record there of late. That is definitely the danger for them. There's no question about it, and they're coming up against a team who have also nailed the third quarter in recent times, and that does seem to be the pivotal period of time in both codes at the moment, coming out after half time, and winning the third quarter is necessary in any big championship match in hurling or football at the moment, and Mayo are doing that, but Kerry are also doing that. That's the thing. And Dublin had been poor in the third quarter, in fairness, all year. Tyrone have been poor in a couple of third quarters. Against Monaghan, they were really poor in that second half in general. So those are the worries on that front, that Kerry do have that minutiae down. The thing on Clifford, maybe this is me throwing out the Kerry code a little bit too easily here, but I'd actually looking at it the complete other way. I think he's just such a talented footballer that the gap between games is just going to make him more hungry, and he hasn't been playing badly, he just hasn't been returning well, as you've said yourself. and I just think that he will be eyeing up that Tyrone game as an afternoon for him to make a bit of hay. I'm sure he'll be kind of talked out of that because that's not what makes a great team performer and that's not what makes a great team. But I think there will be a little bit of the selfish nature that has to be in every forward that will be taking away over the last little while, saying I need a big performance on the scoreboard. So I'd look at it on the other way. But at the same time, you just look at that Mayo collection of backs and you're like, they can handle anyone at the moment. And not only can they handle them, they can do damage down the other end of the pitch to them. And I don't know, like I don't know what they did in the first half. I'm still yet to come across a piece of analysis that really does satisfy the turnaround. And maybe that will never come along because it was such a bizarre evening on Saturday. But whatever Mayo did, it just felt like we were looking at a completely different set of backs. Like if you had told anybody at half time that Lee Keegan would have been standing there with a man of the match award, and that maybe not O'Hora, but certainly Keegan would be standing there with a man of the match award at full time, like you would have got laughed at. Like it was just impossible to think that set of backs were going to turn it on, because why would they not turn it on in the first half? It almost seemed like the option was taken to not do what they did in the second half and the first half. So none of that makes sense, and that is what gives you concern about predicting this in any way and being forthright in your prediction in any way.
Is the shorter league season one of the reasons why we're seeing such big swings in matches in both codes? That actually teams are working stuff out on the fly in the middle of the actual occasion when they're up against another team of similar standard in a championship match? Is that a possibility? Because we've seen this in both hurling and football where massive leads are getting overturned on a fairly regular basis. So that would suggest that something is happening, and maybe it's just coincidence. It could easily be a coincidence, and we won't see it again for years to come. But the fact that there wasn't a full league campaign with all of the usual training and the same usual bonding sessions and weekends away, that actually managers are learning quite a lot on the hoof, and the best ones are capable of turning things around, and the best teams are capable of thinking their way out of problems.
And the water break probably contributes to that as well, does it? That they get an extra option to chat to their players, and gives them another opportunity to be clearer in what they want to do in terms of turning a game around. So, yeah, I'd say there's a couple of different factors there, and it's a trend that we've seen over the last little while. So yeah, like I mean, it is not unfair to anybody that Mayo are top of these power rankings this morning. I want that to be clear, and I'm sure that is clear to everybody, and I think that.
Well, let's talk about the Dubs, who are three. At the start of the year, if you'd said, irrespective of what happens, Dublin could be the third best team in the country, I don't think anybody would have believed you. But now, explain, how did you get there?
Well, I got there clearly because of some terrible refereeing on Saturday night. Isn't that right? Shall we defer to David Hickey here?
Today in the Examiner, 4 atrocious decisions swung the game. 4 atrocious decisions. Number 1, Rob Henley's 50 that was missed. It was allowed to be retaken because Mayo had 16 men in the field when it was taken. Dublin were penalised for a Mayo transgression. 2, the black card for Pascal. 3, the overcarrying free against our goalkeeper, Comerford. Disgrace, he said. And number 4, a lot of talk about John Small, but the hit on Brian Howard just before half time that put him out of the game was a cowardly attack from behind. He was finished after that. I didn't see, I must confess, I don't remember the hit on Howard. I don't remember who did it, and I don't remember how bad it was. But certainly Howard was diminished later in the game compared with the normal influence that he's able to exert on matches. But Howard's come off his very high level. Like John Small's recovery from injury has not been to the point where he's fully able to give the 70 minutes. So many of those players are, Fenton wasn't at his imperious, I'm the greatest footballer of all time standard. Like it's death by a million different cuts for the Dubs. And I think the notion, it's in all the papers today because Paul Caffrey said it, that the COVID breach was something that kind of started this. I don't think that's, like, look, maybe Desi was around less because of the ban, and that was his opportunity in that period of time to get his influence on the group. But like, I heard somebody posit the theory that Desi's a more relaxed manager than Jim Gavin would have been. But if you're coming into a dressing room with a bunch of players who collectively have over 100 All-Ireland medals, are you going to be able to come in and shout the odds and tell them what to do? Throw your medals into the bin, I want you to win better. You're not. You're going to ask those players to assume more responsibility and to take full ownership of the team and to drive the standards. And like, Tessie Farrell's record at the moment is as good as Jim Gavin's was after 2 seasons. Like, you know, there's obviously always going to be fallout when a great team and a dynasty ends the way it has ended. But it ended after extra time. And we got to extra time, you know, through some fairly remarkable refereeing. If Mayo had been beaten, we would be talking about the fairly remarkable refereeing. But, like, what would have happened if Pascal scores or squares the ball?
A riot.
After the John Small incident.
A riot is what would have happened.
The game was over. Game was over.
James Horan, Kung Fu Cantona style kick on Conor Lane is probably what would have happened. He actually put that into the back of the net. That is a very interesting sliding doors moment, and you kind of thought, like, I mean, Pascal, did he take it with the right boot? Am I right to say? Is like it kind of feels like it has to be.
Actually can't. So I'm so like, what happened there? What's going on?
Should he have fisted it over the bar?
Yes, and shouldn't James McCarthy have done the same? And did somebody hit the post in the first half with a free for the Dubs as well? Like, you start to think back on this, like, Dublin created a lot of chances and missed a lot of chances. While Mayo had their quota of bad wides, like really bad wides, the type that, you know, the supporters of every team have seen at some stage and gone, oh, this is our wides disease is back. So I don't know. Like, are Dublin that far away? I'm very much in two minds about this. They could definitely, there could be a fire this off season, and they could decide that the whole thing gets blown up, and some of them can go off and do other things because they've achieved everything that you're supposed to achieve when you start out in your career. Or they can come back and regroup, and I don't know. Those standards aren't going to disappear, are they?
I don't think so. Just to go back to the David Hickey thing. Like, I mean, it is an extraordinary twist to say that Dublin were the ones screwed over and that they were the ones who lost as a result of 4 refereeing decisions, because I definitely have it down as the other way, and I think a lot of people probably do that.
I think the Covert thing, like, it didn't get talked about, but it's a big deal because it's definitely like, oh, I need to get them back into the game here. It didn't feel like he was over-carrying. It really didn't. And
the Henley thing?
The Henley thing, I think that, like, look, Mike Quirk reckons it was genius because he was telling Joe last night, you can see that Lane and Deegan are standing close to him, so he knows this isn't actually time to go. So he goes and he's like, okay, Grant, that's not where I need to go. I need to reorient here and take the shot. And fair enough. I think I buy that he knew that it wasn't the time to take the free, and he took it anyway. Because he didn't seem in any way panicked about the fact that he wasn't going to get another opportunity, did he?
Well, no, he didn't, but like,
maybe he heard a whistle. It's hard to tell.
I think Henley's a pretty cool customer, to be honest. Anyway, I think he'd be exceptional at poker, Robbie Henley. But obviously, like, the importance of the Hickey quotes to Mayo people this morning will be the article that appeared last year with Fogarty as well in the Examiner, describing him as a tragic outfit. I'm just actually kind of rereading that this morning. He actually had a pop off the Cork hurlers as well in that article as well, saying that their performance against Tip was shocking and that they'll never win in All Ireland with the way they approached the game. So could be 2 for the price of 1 in the space of 1 week. But like, it's, I don't know, maybe everybody in Dublin is with Hickey on this, and maybe they feel that the later the game went, the more important decisions went against Dublin because they were in the lead. But I don't know. I just think that there were far bigger decisions that went against Mayo, and they won in spite of terrible officiating, and they didn't win because of terrible officiating. And I think that's pretty cut and dry, to be honest with you. But they're interesting quotes all the same, and maybe it kind of speaks to a wider malaise regarding the refs from the Dublin perspective.
I have to congratulate Mayo. The turning point for me was when O'Shea was taken off, and I was impressed when that man Horn did that. I don't think O'Shea has ever played well in big games. When they took him off, they were more mobile up front, they had more options up front. He's like Messi was at Barcelona, and that everything has to go through him. They were the better for him going off. I don't think he should start in the final. I mean, Messi at Barcelona was pretty good, David. Like, he was the greatest player of all time. So that's a comparison that you're saying is bad. I don't think it's fair to say that Aidan O'Shea has never played well in the big game. I think Aidan O'Shea is a brilliant player, and I think that Mayo probably will start him in the final at this stage. And look, we've got 4 weeks to talk about that, so we'll get into it more as time goes on. Oisin Mullen's going to come back, right? Yeah. 4 weeks is plenty of time for him to get back, is it?
I think so. I think
it wasn't a torn quad, or was it a tear? I don't know.
No, it didn't seem. And also as well, when Horan was talking to Tommy after the game, the only person he ruled out of the final was Cillian O'Connor. Obviously, you can add McLaughlin to that now as well, the jaw. But Oisin Mullen, I think that the information was that he could be back for the final, even in its original date, let alone going back to September 11th.
Okay, so Dublin are third.
Yeah.
Where will Dublin be next season now? And what do you think about, because the age of the players keeps getting talked about. Conor McKillon's got a good piece today in the Herald and the Indo where he's talking about it's time for them to definitely get some of those under 21s through. They've not been great at winning underage. Over the past 2 years, Farrell's handed out championship debuts to Lahif, Aaron Byrne, Sean McMahon, Padder Cuffig-Byrne, Cian Murphy and Ryan Basquel, and none of them started the game against Mayo. So that new talent hasn't come through.
No, a couple of those players were really good underage players, is the thing. So it's not necessarily that. It seems to be the
They still have Kieran Archer to come in at some point.
Yeah, that's something that's been expected for a while. Obviously he's quite young. He would be the youngest of that group, wouldn't he? So it's probably next year. Johnny
Cooper, Mick Fitzsimons, Dean Rock and James McCarthy will be 32 by the time any serious football is played next year. Philly McMahon's 34 next month. I presume Kevin McManaman is thinking about coming back for next year. I don't know if he's going to finish. I don't know. Be interesting to see. Like, if all of those players come back and nobody else comes back, right? So let's say Paul Mannion doesn't come back. Hickey mentions him as somebody who they should target.
Yeah,
I think everybody feels like Paul Mannion, I think, is still only 28 and could definitely do a job. And if he'd been on the bench at the weekend, to come off the bench for the last 5 minutes, would that have been something different? Definitely would have. If he'd started that game, would that have meant Costello was coming off the bench, and that changes things? I don't know. Are Dublin? Are we writing them off because they lost this game at the end of this year? I don't know.
I wouldn't be writing them off personally. I think that they'll still have a say in next year's championship. I think that starting 15 on Saturday was outstanding, and I still think that the strength of their starting 15 is almost it just adds to the whole mystique around the performance on Saturday, because their demise had happened long before the bench started to be run. So there was a lot of failings in that starting 15, and that are just inexplicable, because that 15 was so good. So once you have a starting team, of course you need a bench. You need a good 26 to be able to win an All-Ireland these days, and maybe Dublin don't have that to win next year's All-Ireland again, but they definitely have a strong enough starting team to challenge and to be a problem for every single team they play. The question is then what starts to happen when those players you did mention there do start to retire, the people who are the wrong side of 30. Does that then spell the end of this Dublin team? And I guess the only answer to that we can say in fact is we don't know. We just don't know how good any of these next generation of players are going to be, because as I say, a couple of them were really good underage players and maybe just haven't made the translation to senior level quite as quickly as they would have liked, or maybe there's an element of their game that was more suited to the underage game and just wasn't good enough for senior level. So we don't know what's going to happen. The odds are in Dublin's favour. They have a massive population still, and they're very well resourced. So chances are that the machine is still running very, very well. It's just not producing maybe as well as they would like at the moment. So I can't see them doing, say, a Tyrone at the end of the 2000s, where they kind of go through the wilderness for a while and try and get things back together, but will always end up coming short. I think Dublin's base is around where they are at the moment, and their ceiling is not dominant, because I think that was a once-in-a-lifetime thing, but I think their ceiling is very much contending and being in All-Ireland finals every second year on average.
Yeah, well, that's what they should be with the population and the money and the investment that they have and the numbers that they have, that they should definitely be in All-Ireland semi-finals every single year, and every second year All-Ireland finals, and you win one out of every three. That's what they should harvest at this stage.
Yeah, who was it that made that prediction? Was it actually the Dublin County Board back in the early 2000s? I think that was actually their projection, or that was their hope. Or maybe I'm actually getting that mixed up with one of the newer Cork County Board projections.
No, I think you're right. The Blue Wave
was one every three, and like I can easily see that happening. Like it's just this idea of this golden generation and one of the best teams that we've ever seen. I mean, maybe we are still living in a state of underappreciation, and that's the thing.
I think that potentially we didn't eulogise enough about the individuals who were there, they're, certainly with each passing game as they leave, it's the Wes Hoolahan effect. It's like, wow, those players were really amazing. And I hope that Mayo team that went toe-to-toe with them gets a bit more credit as time goes on, as opposed to the stuff that has been said about them in the past. It's 8 o'clock this morning. OTB AM brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. So you've no doubts. Kerry are number 2, Mayo are number 1, and the Dubs are now, for the first time in the history of the Power Rankings, as lowly as number 3. Are you in any way tempted to reconsider the standing of Wexford, Meath and Kildare? Or because Dublin are now only the 3rd best team in the country and they only got within 10 scores, it's like, no change.
Yeah, you've answered your question there. If anything, should Kildare be dropped below Roscommon and Derry? I think Meath did put up a good account for themselves. Obviously Daniel Flynn's goal against Dublin was sensational, but there was a real frustration being there in Croke Park that day, looking at Dublin not looking very, very good at all, and Kildare not really looking like they believed, or not looking like they had the game plan to really challenge Dublin. But that is the thing. That is the really exciting thing about potentially next year, is that yes, the Mayo and Kerry and Tyrone will feel that they can beat Dublin every time they play them now, but the teams below them will feel that they can suck Dublin down as well, and that has to start in the Leinster Championship. And Meath, for me, would be the fixture next year where you'd be really looking at and thinking to yourself that something big could happen here, because it kind of needs to happen eventually for Meath, and the danger for them is that there is a bounce back pretty soon from the Dublin team. Well,
I think the big unanswered question is whether or not the Dubs are going to have the desire to keep going at the level that they've been at for the last stages. And no doubt other people will come through who will want to do that and will take this as their opportunity. But whether or not their very best players decide that the second act in their career after their first championship defeat ever is going to be, actually, we're going to go back and climb that mountain again and maintain or progress and get those standards back to where they were, even though there isn't the all-time great forwards that were there, or halfbacks that were there, or goalkeeper that was there. So it's going to be very, very interesting to watch over the next couple of years. And because Mayo are a real team, even though we expected Mayo to be away for a couple of years, given how many of their best players, their generational players, have been missing. And what are Mayo going to be like with Cillian O'Connor next year? Like, Jesus, it's going to be good. And hopefully fully fit Tyrone next season will actually be able to do something too. So I'd say Armagh are looking at what's going on and thinking, I'll have a bit of that. Monaghan must be thinking, Jesus, we're not that far away, lads, come on.
If only Monaghan had won that game against Tyrone, if only that begging Hail Mary had actually just dipped over Niall Morgan's crossbar. Well, I guess we would already know the identity of the finalists that would have been played on Sunday. But Monaghan have had a lot of near misses. They, like any team worth their salt and targets Division 1 now, if you feel that you belong in Division 1, you should feel that you can beat every team in Division 1 now, I think, because the standard of the best team in the land is not what it was 4 years ago.
And imagine if you were able to play them at home from time to time, as opposed to having to go to Croker. One last thing, and it's not 2020 hindsight. Said it at the time on this show. I think Kerry are going to regret not playing Cork in Croke Park when they had the opportunity to. Mayo have played 2 big games in Croker. They're totally acclimatised. The 3rd game this year in Croker in the All-Ireland final is not going to be a big deal for them. It's just an opportunity that, like, obviously that Kerry team, all those young lads, won All-Irelands at various age groups, been in All-Ireland finals at various age groups, know their way around Croker, have been there in the past, but why not take the advantage?
I'll be honest with you, I think, you could be right. And if you're talking about Cork regrets, I think that we'll know in a few weeks for sure how deep the regret is, but I think that if they beat Tyrone and Mayo beat them in the final, it'll actually just hammer home what happened last year against Cork, because I think that Dublin team could have been beaten last year, and Mayo maybe weren't at the level they are this year to be able to do it last year, but maybe Kerry could have done it last year. So I don't know, there's a lot of shoulda, coulda, wouldas in there.
All right, there was a good bit of heat on the we talked about Dublin and the foul play and the fact that this is actually just how the great teams manage games and have been, and they play on the edge and all that kind of stuff that we talked about yesterday. Massive backlash from both the Mayo and the Dublin fans yesterday. When's the homecoming parade for the Mayo team, says Ed on Twitter. I left straight after the game, so I didn't see the trophy presentation. I mean, given the anti-dub Mayo loving, I assume they're now All-Ireland champions. Are they All-Ireland champions, Eoin?
Yes.
Embarrassing. Every winning team has an edge to them. Meath of the late 80s, Tyrone of the 2000s. They've gone down as great teams, but not Dublin, just thugs, says David. Is that not exactly the point we were making?
And I was just about to ask, is that pro or anti-Dublin?
He says we're embarrassing.
We're embarrassing, sorry, okay.
Yeah, we're embarrassing
well,
because we
that
said
goes-
exactly what he's just said.
I can't look at myself in the mirror, David.
And the OTB anti-dub Mayo loving continues. Jesus, change the record. It's embarrassing, says Sive. So
Mayo really rub people up the wrong way, don't they? And I'll hold my hands up and say I have been one of the people on the receiving end of being rubbed up the wrong way in the past, but it seems that Dublin are kind of experiencing that at the moment.
Shawnee says there's an arrogance about Mayo and their supporters that thankfully doesn't exist in any other county.
Not true.
It exists in other counties.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's what you're saying. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
that it's not true that they're...
No, everybody's arrogant. Everybody who has won a big game comes across as arrogant, and they puff the chest out and they celebrate. I mean, like Dublin fans are arrogant when they won 6 in a row. Kerry will be arrogant if they win this year. That is the way victory works.
This is worst case scenario for you though. If Tyrone somehow were managed to overturn the massive 7-1 odds that they face, and it'd be Tyrone against Mayo in an All-Ireland final, you would be like, is it possible that a giant rip in the earth's core can swallow the stadium and we never find out the result?
The beauty of a Tyrone versus Mayo final is that Kerry can't get beaten by Mayo in said final. So there will be a silver lining to all of that.
Tyrone Pat 1 says Dublin defeat was inevitable. If not this year, then next. Other counties were catching up with their fitness and conditioning. It's easy to look better than the opposition when your opposition feels as though they're wading through treacle. Thankfully, Mayo had the conditioning this time. Dublin's days on easy street are over. Al Wharton says Mayo did this to Dublin in the past and nearly beat them. If you attack Dublin, match them physically and are as relentless as they are in defence, they will fall apart. Were it not for 2 own goals, something I'd never seen before and something only Mayo could manage, they'd have beaten them in 2016. When you think about the 2 own goals, I mean, I would say that Mayo need to just calm everything down a bit in terms of the 4 weeks that they're going to have to just shake the bottle. Every day the bottle's going to be shaken a little bit more until it's ready to explode. But remember that you've had 2 own goals in an All-Ireland final. You've had sendings off after a mass brawl where your best player got picked out and the opposition's halfback. There's been like various different ways over the years in which the made-up curse has manifested itself and made itself manifest. Just picture the worst and be pleasantly surprised if the best happens.
Like it's interesting that you mentioned 96 there. Is this Mayo's best pre-match opportunity of winning an All-Ireland since 96?
Let's wait and see who they're playing. So if Kerry do put in a 7-1 on performance against Tyrone, then they'll win by 10 to 12 points, right? That's what that means, essentially.
So they will be favourites for the All-Ireland. Like that's the point.
They're massive favourites for the All-Ireland, even still. Like,
see, that's the point.
It's not a 50-50 game. Mayo are 11-8.
Like Andy Moore has made that point that if you take any of those games individually, Mayo have never been favourites for the All-Ireland. Like if you go back through all of those, I'm not sure if they were for Cork in '89 but they definitely felt that.
I think so. That Cork team had been coming for.
But it definitely felt that maybe Meath in '96 was a team that Mayo would have fancied. They'd like beaten Kerry in the semi-final, and of course Meath had pedigree of having recent All-Ireland winners in that team. But it kind of felt that was one you'd have above all the other ones as the opportunity on paper before the game for them to win. And I wonder if this year's one could be something similar.
That Mayo 96 team are all on a cycle today raising money for the cancer research, the oncology unit in Mayo, and I can only imagine the crack that they are having this week after what happened at the weekend. And we were trying to speak to some of them this morning. They're like, I am hanging out with my buddies from 1996 and we are getting on the road and we're having a road trip and we're raising money for cancer and there might be some fun being had. And I'd say maybe later on today there'll be some videos emerging. We should ask DB to record everything and see what happens. So anyway, 6 in a row. The lads need a break. Come back next year and do it all again, says DC. It's possible. I mean, you would not put it beyond that great team and those great players that they can come back from this. But at the same time, something has been broken. The sense that they're inevitably going to win every match, that's gone. And you don't get that back. Great teams, no matter what they do now, that's not coming back for this group of players. They're going to have to forge something new themselves. So very interesting to see what that second act is like.